Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining in. I'm going to kick off things with giving a little update on the fire activity we've recently seen in Montana. Date in Montana this year, we've had 1,835 fires that burned 257,350 acres. As of Monday, state fire suppression costs totaled about $6.3 million and represent also the numerous fire management assistance grants, the emergency dollars that we received to assist with firefighting costs. Over the past 10 days, we've seen critical fire weather conditions. We've seen extreme fire growth and a significant number of large impacts to our communities, especially those in the wildland-urban interface. The Bridger foothills, Bobcat, Snyder, Rice, and Huff fires showed us that wildfires are impacting our communities in every corner of our state. Montanans have been forced from their homes, and unfortunately, some have even lost their homes. We must understand that wildfire affects every corner of Montana. It's incumbent upon all of us to prepare for it. On Saturday, I visited the Snyder fire outside of Ashland, and yesterday I visited and received a briefing on the Bridger Foothills fire in Bozeman. The Bridger Foothills fire is now 8,224 acres and 52% contained. The Rocky Mountain Type 1 Incident Management Team is assigned to the fire with over 330 personnel working to secure the perimeter and continue assisting residents impacted by the fire. Gallatin County Sheriff had announced earlier this week that 28 residences and an unknown number of outbuildings have been damaged or destroyed in the fire. The Bobcat fire, which is just south of Roundup, is at over 30,000 acres, and the fire threatened residences with an unknown number incurring damages. The extreme fire behavior caused communities and rural subdivisions to evacuate. Fire is currently being managed by a Type 2 Northern Rockies Incident Management Team. The fire is now 60% contained. These fires are stark reminders of how quickly conditions can change. It's imperative that we continue to focus on fire prevention to avoid additional starts. Though there's a brief relief from critical fire conditions in many parts of our state over the weekend, hot and abnormally dry conditions are predicted to continue through the middle of September. Under these conditions, new wildland fire starts are likely throughout the state and have the potential to be difficult to control. We're not out of the woods yet, especially as we look at what is happening in our neighboring states of Washington, Oregon, and California. And to that end, also was asked by California for fire resources, recently approved, and we'll be sending down, as we had earlier, 2 strike teams, which is 5 engines per team and about 15 firefighting personnel. As we look at what's happening here in Montana, though, please do your part and stay safe while outdoors. Remember to recreate responsibly. Keep your campfires small when hunting or camping, and continue to remain vigilant. Over the last couple of months, we've been working to ensure that schools have the resources they need, whether it's providing reopening guidance or dedicating coronavirus relief funds, to ensure that they could adapt this fall to serving students in some capacity. Montana schools, as well as students, families, teachers, and staff, have already done a remarkable job to prepare for and begin this school year. I know it's taken a great deal of planning to deliver the high-quality education that Montanans expect from their schools while implementing measures to keep students and staff as healthy and as safe as possible. Well, our schools look different this year, and there have certainly already been challenges, I'm pleased that schools are finding ways to offer at least some in-person instruction and working to serve students' emotional, nutritional, and academic needs. We know that there will continue to be challenges, including suspected or confirmed cases of COVID-19 in our K-12 schools. School nurses and education professionals have asked my office for guidance to ensure that they're following best practices, doing everything they can to keep kids and staff both safe and schools open. So I'd asked a group of public health experts to come together, develop outbreak response protocols for schools, to use this sort of high-level guidance in consultation with their local public health agencies. The team included the state medical officer, the state epidemiologists, doctors, and local public health officers. Today we're releasing the guidance that they've been working on diligently for the past couple of weeks. The guidance was based on work done by the state of Rhode Island, and it's been shared with public health agencies across our state, schools, and education professionals. The document does not replace direct engagement with local public health, but rather provides an overview of what will occur throughout that engagement process. I also want to be clear that the material that we're releasing today certainly may change. We know too well that the virus and its impacts have changed rapidly over the last 6 months, and we should certainly expect that to continue. Guidance includes a list of COVID-19 symptoms and provides resources to help schools determine if a sick student or staff member is symptomatic but unlikely to have COVID-19, or if they have matching symptoms and should seek testing. There are isolation and quarantine protocols, testing protocols, and guidance on when an individual should return to school based on whether they're symptomatic but unlikely to have COVID-19, whether they're suspected COVID-19 case, a confirmed case, or a close contact of a known case. For example, if a student or staff member has COVID-19 related symptoms, their protocol includes sending that individual home to isolate, recommending testing, and a requirement to get a test or recover before returning to school. Close contacts should quarantine for at least 14 days, should be tested, self-monitor for symptoms, with a negative test not changing the quarantine time. There's also guidance on when to involve local public health and when to seek emergency care. Additionally, there are recommendations for athletic and extracurricular activities. This includes many measures that schools are already taking, including increasing sanitation practices, wearing face coverings when appropriate, and minimizing travel to other communities. Athletes who test positive should be cleared by a healthcare provider before resuming participation. And because we know that disruptions in extracurriculars can be challenging for children and adolescents, participants should be monitored for signs and symptoms of anxiety or depression. Finally, there is guidance to ensure disclosure of information about a person who tests positive, and that guidance is in line with privacy requirements. School nurses or designated public health representatives can receive information about positive cases, as well as the principal, to take steps to prevent the spread of transmission in the school setting. The document was created with the understanding that schools and local public health will work together if there's a positive case, and focus on how schools should receive notification when a student tests positive. It is important that the public knows when a student or staff member tests positive in school, and we're working on how we can make sure that parents and staff have the information that they need while also protecting the privacy of individual students and teachers. The full plan is available at covid19.mt.gov for the public, and it's already been distributed to schools and local public health. While we prioritize making sure that our kids can get an education while staying safe from COVID-19, we also continue to look at ways that we can serve the various industries of our state and ensure that they can continue a viable path of economic recovery. Over the last few months, we've directed more than $10 million in coronavirus relief funds to nonprofits through the Social Services Grant Program. With a maximum of $10,000, these grants are used to preserve existing programs and services and keep employees on the job. While those grants provided stability and allowed many nonprofits to continue providing essential services to their communities, we know that there are nonprofits who need additional support to sustain their viability. Today, we're issuing new guidelines for nonprofits and the opportunity to seek another round of funding. Eligible nonprofits can receive up to 10% of their 2019 annual operating budget, or up to a maximum grant of $150,000. Nonprofits must have an annual operating budget of at least $20,000 to apply for the second round of funding. Applicants must submit a budget of proposed uses of grant funds and certify that the funds will be used only for pandemic-related purposes. As many grantees did with the Business Stabilization Grant, they may request less than what they qualify for. The application will be available on the covidrelief.mt.gov site on Tuesday, so this upcoming Tuesday. And nonprofits who applied for round 1 will be notified that they may be eligible for round 2. Today, I'm also pleased to announce additional coronavirus relief funds will be allocated to the Montana Meat Processing Infrastructure Grant Program. This program saw an incredible amount of interest and demand, making it a very competitive process. The impacts of the coronavirus pandemic have drawn attention to the challenges faced by our nation's meat processing systems. And by addressing this complex issue here in Montana, we're building resilience to future supply chain interruptions in communities all across our state. In-state meat processing facilities are critical for our producers. Ensuring the proper infrastructure exists to provide them with reliable, value-added markets to sell their meat is essential to both bolstering our food security, especially during these times. For example, the Fettis Family Meats, which is a meat processing grant recipient based out of Manhattan, is expanding their cold storage to help producers be less dependent on out-of-state large packing companies, many of which are already operating at maximum capacity with severe backlogs already. With help from the grant, they aim to significantly increase their processing capacity, so make a major difference in both the producer's bottom line and the availability of fresh quality meat. Processors like Bainville Meats in eastern Montana are seeing a surge in demand. They're processing beef from local ranchers for folks who had never even considered buying their meat from anywhere but the grocery store before COVID-19 hit. This heightened interest in buying local and supporting local economies is a silver lining to our new way of doing business. The meat processing grant that Bainville Meats received has been a game changer, allowing them to invest in equipment like a saw and grinder so they can scale up their operations and continue providing a wide variety of custom cuts of meat. Many of the projects already funded are removing barriers to processing in what are really innovative ways. Cordova Farms in Choteau plans to purchase a self-contained poultry processing unit built inside a shipping container called Plant in a Box. Doing so will not only diversify their operation, but it'll open up new capacity for other operations to raise poultry as well. The investments made through the meat processing infrastructure grants will have a considerable impact for consumers, producers, and communities across Montana, a state known for having more cows than people. I look forward to announcing more of the awards made through that program soon. As we continue to support businesses and organizations through economic recovery, we're also ensuring that we remain fiscally strong. We recently shared that Fitch reaffirmed Montana's strong AA+ bond rating and stable outlook based on our conservative financial practices. We were notified yesterday that Moody's has also reaffirmed our strong bond rating due to conservative fiscal management and our stable economy. With these affirmations, we're again looking at going to market to bond for infrastructure investments, which will help to put dollars into our economy and create jobs. We'll have more to share on that in the coming weeks. There's no doubt that we continue to live in unprecedented times with a global pandemic, with wildfire season, as businesses and schools look to stay healthy and stay open, and as we continue towards economic recovery. The 8,659 Montanans who've been diagnosed positive with COVID-19, or the 123 Montanans who've lost their lives from this virus, is not to be taken lightly. Neither are the homes and the memories that go along with them, lost to wildfires. These numbers really are, they're much more than just statistics. They're beloved family members and cherished friends who've had to sacrifice so much over these past months. Yet in times like this, I think it's also really important that we look for the bright spots. I think of the firefighters, law enforcement, and local and state and federal partners who came together working night and day to protect Montanans from wildfire and save lives. I think of the 3 DNRC firefighters who, on the same day that our flags were lowered to half staff, after losing Bozeman firefighter Tom Duffy, they had to deploy their fire shelters and fortunately were able to return home to their families. First time we'd had to deploy fire shelters in 50 years. And what that effectively means is the fire burns right over and around you. I think of the nurses and the doctors who continue to put their health at risk in order to care for COVID-19 patients. I think of the nonprofits who've continued to deliver services, and the businesses that are taking all the right steps to keep their employees and customers safe. In all of these moments, we see Montanans coming together and putting their differences aside to protect the state that we love. That really is our way of life, and it's this optimism that reminds me that we will make it through this, and we'll make it through this together. I'll now open it up for questions. If you'd like to ask a question, you can press 5*. You'll be notified that your hand is raised. When we unmute your phone, you'll be notified that you've been called on to ask your question. First phone question.
Hi, this is Kayla Barosh with Yellowstone Public Radio News. For many districts, school has been in session for 3 weeks, so why release this guidance now?
So, Kayla, in part, why release the guidance now is that we were just requested, it was a couple weeks ago actually, from school nurses to try to help provide some guidelines as far as what should be done. And we wanted to work with the public health community to do it in a way that, and again, I'll underscore that this isn't comprehensive and says everything to do, but provides the schools with that base information that they need. So I've been working on it a couple weeks and wanted to actually make sure that it's something that would be useful to the education community. Next phone question.
Hi, Governor. This is Iris Samuels with the Associated Press. The Department of Labor announced today that the $400 weekly unemployment payments will no longer be available with support from FEMA starting September 5th. So I'm wondering, do you intend to continue to provide unemployment benefits funding through coronavirus relief funds? And do you plan to increase that funding support for unemployed Montanans given the loss of funding from FEMA?
Yeah. As you note, Iris, the FEMA dollars And the federal unemployment additional dollars that the president announced by executive order ended last week. Our Department of Labor and Industry took quick steps to get that program implemented. That means that we were able to avail for Montanans for the full 6 weeks of the program. However, we knew that that would be temporary, and that's one of the reasons why both we ensured that Montanans receive the full $400 for as long as possible, and also why I urged Congress to get back to work and come up with a more sustainable solution. So we have done everything we can on the state side. I think this is exactly why Congress is in session, and urge them to come up with a sustainable solution that actually brings some degree of stability, so you're not turning this on and turning this off. So there won't be additional state dollars. We'll be waiting for the federal government to take action. Next phone question.
This is Mark Hebert from the Phillips County News in Malta, Montana. We've gone in a little over a month from 113 total cases down to 0 as of yesterday. I'm wondering what you think about that turnaround in Phillips County.
Yeah, Mark, and thanks for joining. The last 2 weeks, also one of the things that I did is highlighted where Phillips County both was and where it is. And I think that it is, that was a significant outbreak in the county. But it's great to see the numbers back down to 0, because you were at 0 before that started. And commend folks in the county for taking this seriously. And I think, look, what we want everywhere where our hot spots are is to make it so it's no longer a hot spot. And that means actually following quarantine and isolation. That means social distancing, wearing a mask, and following the guidelines, and taking care of one another like folks in Phillips County have been doing to go from 133 to 0.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next phone question.
Governor, this is Matt Hoffman from the Billings Gazette. I want to return to your comment about it being important the public knows when a student tests positive in school. During this morning's Board of Public Education meeting, your education advisor said that state health officials have reached out to public health officials in Yellowstone County, specifically regarding a policy that doesn't provide a general notification about COVID-19 cases. Is that specific Yellowstone County policy a concern for you?
One more time, repeat the question, please. Matt,
So Yellowstone County public health officials have, and the school district have not issued any notification of positive cases in schools. Is that a concern for your office, given that you said today it's important the public knows when a student tests positive?
Yeah, so I think the medical side, now, do I think it's important directly? Look, there are privacy laws. Like, I don't think that there should be identified Jimmy Doe as positive. But I do think that at the end of the day, in a way that can actually protect the identity of the individual student or the teacher, that protocols are in place so that parents in the education community knows when there are outbreaks in schools. And we're continuing to work with public health in the education community of the best way for that to occur. Next phone question.
Yeah, hi, Governor. This is Gwen Florio with the Missoulian. And I'm looking at a report from the state that talks about cases case reports growing exponentially starting in June, and then kind of maintaining that growth in mid-July through August. It's kind of hard to ignore the graph. June is when we started easing restrictions, and I guess what I'm wondering is with cold weather coming, with a possible spike in cases again in the fall, do you have any plans? Are there contingency plans for another shutdown or kind of imposing more restrictions again?
Gwen, I certainly hope not. I mean, from my perspective, at the end of the day, I mean, what you should look at in that, and what part of the take is that there was continued exponential growth for quite some time. And then it really flattened out. Now it's still at a number higher than I or others would like. And many times we can, identify either congregate care facilities or others that have really added to the numbers. But we'll continue to, as we have for the last 9 months, view this through both the health lens. First of all, this is a public health emergency, and then it's an economic challenge. But continue to both work with areas. Well, I hope that we don't have any rollbacks. We've also allowed all throughout that local jurisdictions can be more restrictive than sort of the statewide level directives that I put out.
Jessica Watts with ABC
Thank you.
Montana. I believe that there is a protest scheduled here at the Capitol tomorrow and at Lewis and Clark Public Health on the mask mandate. So kind of what is your response to that protest?
Well, Jessica, just as there were responses, or I guess there were protests, the mask requirements earlier. First, this virus doesn't care about politics. And in my weekly calls with the Vice President and all governors, continue to hear encouragement from them to say, folks should be wearing a mask. We know that's how actually we'll bring those numbers down. But that protest or any other protest, as we've seen in the past, I mean, all Montanans have that right to peacefully protest. And certainly wouldn't discourage that. Now, what I would encourage them to do in protesting is be safe and be careful. Maybe even wear a mask. Next phone question.
Hi, yes, Governor. It's Casey Elliott at the Dillon Tribune. I want to go back to your plans for the schools. I noticed that you mentioned that it's for K to 12. Do you have anything similar for the universities themselves? And also, speaking to the universities, if we have outbreaks at them, we've got I know the state site tracks the positive cases by residents. I'm sure a lot of those students at those universities aren't all residents of whatever county they're part of. Is there a way to break that out?
So the question was that what are the university systems doing when it comes to disclosure testing? I know that I think University of Montana and Montana State University, both in Missoula and Bozeman, have been working with their local public health in figuring out the ways to actually provide more information on sort of the college community or the university community. But the concern raised was, so let's say you're positive at Dillon, but your home is actually in Arizona. Will that be reported out? Do you want to? I'll turn it over to Jim Murphy, the head of the Infectious Disease Bureau.
The question about residency, especially for college students, is something we struggle with a lot of diseases. But in general, we consider that college student a resident of the community that they're currently living in. So wherever they, call home, that's where they're going to be counted. We are looking at ways to provide a little bit more detail in our biweekly reports that would point out residents of a county like Gallatin, for example, that are associated with the university setting or with the university outbreak. So we will be counting college students in Montana as residents of the county where they're attending school, and we will, to the best of our ability, work with the county health departments and the institutions involved to provide a little bit more detail on any outbreaks that occur in those settings.
Last phone question.
Hi, Governor. This is Kayla again with YPR. Health departments who are reluctant to share information about COVID-19 cases in schools with districts point to the Government Healthcare Information Act as a roadblock to sharing information. Health officials say the rules of the law weren't written with a respiratory pandemic in mind. Governor Bullock, you've waived some laws that have proven to be roadblocks during the pandemic. Why not waive portions of this law in order to bolster communication between health officials and school districts?
Sure. First, I'll have Jim Murphy address it, then I'll get expressly to it.
The Government Healthcare Information Act is a very strict law, and it is something that is designed to protect the confidentiality and privacy of anybody that's reported to a health department as a case of communicable disease. However, it does allow limited sharing under certain circumstances. What we have worked out and what you'll see in the guidance document that the governor referred to today to help schools respond to things are ways to share that information with people that have a need to know so that the proper response measures can be taken. So, for example, if there's a school nurse working with that school district, the information has always been something that we could share with that person because that person is part of the medical system. The Government Healthcare Information Act allows that sharing. If there is no school nurse, which is something that a lot of the schools in Montana do not have access to, at least on a consistent basis, we have figured out with the guidance document here other ways that the local health officer could share information with a designated contact in that school setting. That will allow them to share information that's necessary in order for us to figure out who else might have been exposed so that all the precautions can be implemented that we need to. So I think we're confident with what we've worked out, that the Government Healthcare Information Act is adaptable enough to this situation that we can do what we need to do to prevent transmission in these settings.
And I think to the second piece of that, Kayla, look, I do think most parents and community members want to know if there are cases in their school. So we're continuing to work with the community, I say the community en masse, in large, of what the best way to provide information is without doing it in a way that would end up identifying individual students, faculty, or staff. Well, thank you again for joining in. Please, as it really warms up this weekend, be safe and be cautious of fire prevention and continue to take the efforts, like as the reporter from Phillips County had said, to be able to take the numbers that we see and be bringing them down by the actions we all take together. Thanks.